Hey, and welcome to another episode of Bob Z UnKut Community Views, the podcast where we're going to give it to you with integrity and going to give it to you uncut. You're not going to see this on none of the networks, so don't even try. You just got to go in and click on the link because they're not going to show this on network news.
Well,
and that's not a bad thing.
We're
going to keep it 100. We have a very special guest, very, very, very special guest here. Just a little background. She didn't know I was going to spring this on her.
Oof.
We met on Facebook.
Yes, we did.
For a mutual friend was Kurt Hogan.
And Rowena, you know Rowena?
Rowena Johns. Yep.
Yes.
So we met, and the thing that I remember we would cry together over Hillary. And so, we went back, and then, we kept, different issues would come up, and we would like share little comments and stuff. But now she's become a delegate, and now she's running for lieutenant governor, the second highest office in the state, in the Commonwealth, the state of Virginia. And I'd like to welcome Hala Ayala to our show.
Thanks, Bob Z and UnKut. And oh, by the way, when we were talking about Hillary, I had the ugly cry. The Hillary, the cry that we were in fetal position, tears were running down my eyes. It was pretty ugly.
I was sick as a dog, man. I people thought I had just left the earth. I wouldn't talk to anyone. I went.
You done checked out.
I cut everybody off. That was trauma.
No.
That was trauma.
No, I know that's not what we're here to talk about, but this was just really something that should be, pressed upon about why voting matters. Mm-hmm. People were saying, oh, my vote doesn't count.
Right.
Or democracy, she's going to win.
Right.
Yeah. Play around, you get your feelings hurt.
I know. So let's get on with the interview. My first question is, and I've been watching your political career, and I would call it a meteoric rise. I mean, it's been like boom, she on the scene now. We can't stop her. Well. So I'm just impressed. And can you tell our viewers and our listeners, because we have viewers and listeners, we're on Apple Podcasts, and we're all over the various platforms. And so we have a lot of different people that are watching. And who is Hala Ayala? And what made you get involved with the political world? And also, what have you discovered about the political arena? I hear it's kind of a blood sport out there.
Well, you can't tell all the secrets, Bob, I started out my life, before I even got into politics, my father was murdered when I was 2.
Oh, no.
My mother suffered from trauma. When we talk about the struggle, it was real because she found out that my father had passed away by reading his obituary in the newspaper. They didn't even bother to give us a call.
Wow.
And then, we grew up, we were standing sometimes in food lines, depending on family. My mother was wondering how she was going to keep a roof over her head and food on the table for me and my sister. And you fast forwarded, and I thought life or this vicious cycle was going to repeat itself. And I was working at a gas station. You may have seen the story, making minimum wage, no health care, no safety net. And it was essentially, I almost died having my son. I got pregnant with my son during that time, planning a family, and I didn't have health care, and Medicaid saved my life. But the fear I had as an Afro-Latina woman of color, that I was giving birth to my black son, and we were going to be a statistic. Because if you look at the trajectory of my life, you are seeing the tone set up. We were already, not only being a woman of color, but economically challenged, right? And these lived experiences. When I decided to run for delegate, I was talking to voters. I was taking my lived experiences, why Medicaid expansion would matter, why equal work for equal pay would matter, why after, I've found my career in cybersecurity, and that's a whole nother journey. But running for lieutenant governor is definitely planting seeds for the future, because I'm a firm believer of you can't be what you can't see. And I didn't see people that look like me in higher office.
Right, yeah.
So my journey, when you talk about like, who am I, how did I get my start, and even, how, I'm walking. If you'd have told me 2 decades ago I'd be standing here with you talking about this, or be on the stage with the President of the United States, or running for statewide office, respectfully, I told you you were nuts. Right.
Well, I'm going to switch gears just a little bit. I'm going to use my my constitutional voice here. The official responsibilities of Virginia's lieutenant governor are set forth in Article 5 of the Constitution of Virginia. According to the Constitution of Virginia, the lieutenant governor's official duties are to serve as president of the Senate and to preside over the Senate, other than the official verbiage. Now, I'm off of that now, okay?
That was quite constitutional.
Thank you. I try to do my best. I taught political science, so,
Invoking it.
Invoking my, channeling my poli-sci skills.
Yes.
How do you see the importance of, because a lot of people downplay that, but how do you see the importance of this office?
It's unfortunate that, they downplay it, because if they didn't know that our current lieutenant governor has broken 52 votes. He was tiebreaker for 52 votes in his 4-year career. To me, that's a lot statistically. Secondly, when important issues like Medicaid expansion, like teacher pay raises, criminal justice reform, and all of the things and progresses we have made, several of those key issues, the lieutenant governor was the tie-breaking voice for and vote for. And we have a slim Democratic majority sometimes on these issues. So that role is critical to our advancement. And I would say that as lieutenant governor, me taking on this, I've got big shoes to fill, and continuing to advance our progress and protect our progress, that this role is so critical. Bob, I want to be the last woman in the room with the governor. That's Governor Terry McAuliffe. I'm going to claim it now.
All right.
And talk about these very lived issues, and those lived issues of the voters that I'm speaking to across the Commonwealth, and bringing them in the room. If you don't have a seat at the table, then you're on the menu.
Wow. I've heard that a time or two, and
Yes, sir.
It serves to be true. And I'm really proud of the progress that you've made, and even the effort, because I think one of the things that a lot of people don't get involved in politics just based upon, what they may have heard, the negativity, but we need more people like yourself to step up, get involved. I would do it myself, but I think I would last.
Sounds like we got a campaign, folks. Here we go.
I think I would last a week.
Bob Z, UnKut.
I would last a week, man.
What do you think? Oh, well.
I would last like 1 week. Anyway, but okay, getting back to you. Get off me. Okay.
Getting serious.
All right. What are the top 3 issues facing the Commonwealth, and where do you stand on them?
Well, I would say this, Bob. We have a lot of issues that Virginians care about, but mostly I'm hearing about what's happening in Texas, what's happening in Florida, what was happening in Georgia. So, for instance, one, of course, is health care, and I equate reproductive health care in that same conversation. So both health care and reproductive health care, for those who are listening, we want to get out of this pandemic, COVID, and we also want to make sure that we were protecting, our gun safety laws, that we were getting children back safely to schools. Folks, get vaccinated, so that we are protecting the Commonwealth. Next, I would say that, again, on these key issues, we have to remind voters that everything is on the line this November, because, again, the lieutenant governor is that tie-breaking vote. Everything can be contingent on who sits in that seat. My opponent, I won't mention names, but my opponent believes that a pharmacist should be able to deny you contraceptives simply based on their belief. This is how critical that November 2nd is of this year. And Bob, democracy is not a spectator sport, so we have to get off the sidelines and make sure we vote like all of these issues are on the line, because they are.
Okay. Well, this next question is sort of a piggyback, but it's in a kind of a different direction. It's during the first 100 days, I asked you what were the top 3 issues, and sometimes they run hand in hand, but sometimes we don't get a chance to. Well, that may be the top 3 issues, but we might not get a chance to work on them. But during the first 100 days of a new gubernatorial administration, where would the priorities be, and how? And you mentioned that you gave a little, like, how would they differ from your opponent? And just, I don't care, I'm gonna cut. Your opponent is from here. She's from this area, and I mean, as conservative as they come, and that's not really my bag. Everybody who's watching and listening, they know that. But you know, so what? How would your priorities during the first 100 days? How would they differ from?
Well, I think, you know, as you alluded to earlier or mentioned earlier, you know, the issues that voters care about are the issues that I'm carrying with me to the Senate. Let me tell you that, you know, in the first 100 days, you know, we have to listen to not only as we're campaigning and talking to voters, you need to bring those voices to Richmond with you. When I promised as a delegate that I would pass Medicaid expansion, Democrats delivered. I delivered on that promise. When I said I was going to pass the Equal Rights Amendment, you know, we're going to, you know, close the wage gap, raise the minimum wage, all of these very important issues, we did that. We delivered. Me and my opponent differ on all of the, just about all these issues, and I feel that she's quite too extreme for Virginia because she's not listening to them. You know, and I would say this, Bob, as I'm campaigning, lots of coffee is a part of that conversation. I love the work that I do for service, changing Virginians' lives, and because Democrats have delivered and we have the majority, and this is what's on the line this November, we have been able to advance Virginia light years, removing Jim Crow laws from every system. We're not done yet. This was the floor, not the ceiling, but the progress that we have made. And when our fellow GOP members, like Winsome Sear, hey, the sky's gonna fall, it's not falling.
Here's my greatest fear and my greatest joy, if you can believe that. Never in my life, you know, the progress and strides we've made probably over the last 3 administrations. Well, yeah, I say 2.5, 3 administrations. I would never think that, you know, I mean, you know, from voting purple, going from, the first time I voted, it was in 1981. I'm giving away my age, but it was for Ronald Reagan. I didn't vote for Ronald Reagan. No, he was on the ticket. That's my first election was in 1981, or 1980, the election, and Ronald Reagan, he won, and I was like, oh, it's gonna be a long life, man. You know,
yeah.
And because Virginia was, I mean, it's like I moved to D.C. I mean, I did not want to live in a red state, and that's before they were even calling them red states and blue states. But I just remember that time. I was like, man, it's gonna be tough. And so what we've done, I said all of that to say what we've done. I mean, over the last few years, you couldn't have told me.
No.
In my lifetime that Virginia would be on this progressive track. However, here's my thing. One question I have: Virginia only allows 1 term to run for the consecutively to run for governor to serve. Your running mate has returned for a 2nd term. Many people I have spoken to believe that 1 term is rather antiquated, and it's not saying nothing against Governor McAuliffe, but where are you on this issue? I think that, you know, that's like term limits on steroids. You can get stuff done in 4 years, but I would like to see, and I don't know if it would, you know, whatever moves we need to make, but I would support at least 2 terms for a governor. Where do you stand on that?
Well, I will say this. When Terry McAuliffe was in office the first time, he delivered.
Yeah, he did.
And if he gets elected, and I'm sure he will be elected, he'll deliver again. I'll tell you a little anecdote about Terry. I canvassed for Terry the first time he ran for office and the second time. Why? Because I believe what he was fighting for. He was a brick wall for women's health care. He was a brick wall to help our schools and our teachers and our children. And he is a governor that's going to go down in history. He has pardoned individuals. He has restored voting rights to those who deserved, to over 200,000 Virginians. And the one thing that's personal about Terry that most voters don't know, and I'll share this with you, and I've only shared it here.
Okay.
First time on UnKut.
Breaking news, breaking news.
Breaking news. So the second time I was canvassing for Terry, and he doesn't know I'm going to share this, but I think you should really know how authentic, compassionate that he is, not only about this Commonwealth, but about the people of the Commonwealth. So I was canvassing. I left my house from February to, Election Day. But during that time, I had fell and got a concussion in August of the 2013 year, his second run. I was graduating from college, from online schooling. Then, towards the end of August, I didn't get to walk because my sister passed away.
Oh, wow.
I did not,
My condolences.
Thank you. I could not afford to take my children with me to Phoenix, Arizona, where she was. A family member came in and stayed with my children. Terry McAuliffe sent his staff to my house. They brought my children dinner and lunch every day, offered to take them to school. It gets no realer than that, Bob.
Right.
And, this is why I'm passionate about Terry. This is why I fight so hard, or fought so hard, by working, making sure he gets across the finish line. Now I am lucky enough to be on the ballot with Terry, and we both have to get across the finish line. Our Attorney General, Mark Herring, he's included in that conversation.
Right. One of the things that I wanted to share, I guess, we talked about returning citizens is the term now that's used for. It used to be ex-felons, and now they call it's returning citizens. And I had my job at that time was to the time you were speaking about when he was doing the pardoning and changing all the rules was that. Scratch back up. Okay, my job at that time was as an employment specialist for the Second Chances program, and I was responsible for finding work for people who had just come from being incarcerated and trying to restoration of rights. I mean, when it hit restoration of rights, that's another thing I never thought.
200,000.
Yeah.
And then they took him to court to try to sue him for that, and he still won.
I remember that. But I just don't want, and this, like I said, this is one of my greatest worries, that we've come such a long way. I don't want us to get complacent. And sometimes, and I'm looking around, and as a journalistic person, I look around and I see all these Yunkin commercials everywhere, and I'm like, we gotta do something. We gotta do something. This guy's getting too much, And so then they had a poll that came out like 2 days ago.
It is a close election, Bob. I mean, I feel you on that, because as you're saying this, it invokes something in me that we're seeing play out about state legislatures that are also on the ballot this year. What's happening in Georgia, what's happening in Texas, how the Texas Democrats had to come to D.C. to lobby for help.
I remember they left. They walked out of the House. I mean, the Capitol building in Texas because they didn't want to vote. So
we don't want to see that here in Virginia, and that's why, to your point, elections matter.
They do. They matter. They matter a lot. And one of the things, and I've been watching Virginia politics probably since I was like 7 or 8 years old. I was like the oddball watching the news, and everybody else was playing, and I was like, man, the news is on. And so I'm looking at it, and I look at if I know Nova is going to come through, Hampton Roads, Coast Virginia, that's kind of I always kind of like, we'll see Nova and we'll see Richmond. We can like put them in the bank, boom. Put Richmond and Northern Virginia in the bank.
Well, we can't make assumptions because sometimes people were like, oh, we have an election? Didn't we just vote for the president?
Yeah.
And typically and historically, the governor that is in the office is usually opposite of the party who's in the White House.
Exactly.
So this is why we have to show up and show out. You know what?
I've never seen Richmond and Northern Virginia go anywhere in the last 20 years, you know.
Well, you know what? Look what happened to Hillary. She won parts of Virginia, granted, to your point.
She won Richmond and Northern Virginia.
And she did, but we have to show up in order for that to happen, right?
So everybody needs to come down here to Virginia Beach and Chesapeake and camp out in Virginia Beach and Chesapeake because Norfolk and Portsmouth and Newport News and Hampton are going to go blue.
Absolutely. We've been down here several times,
So, yeah.
you know, as you know, and we take no voter for granted. It is, you know, you have to be able to let voters know and educate them who's on the ballot and why they need to support the Democratic ticket. That's a shameless plug, but I mean it. We gotta do what we gotta do.
I'm on the team. So look, we're gonna take a break and go pay some bills. We're speaking with Hala Ayala. She's running for Lieutenant Governor for the great Commonwealth of Virginia. We'll be back in 2 and 2.
Welcome to Comedic Services, LLC. We provide supportive in-home and residential group home services in the Hampton Roads area, including Williamsburg, Franklin, Zuni, Joanno, and Southampton County. Our offices are located at 2428 Almeida Avenue, Suite 170 in Norfolk, Virginia, and at 601 North Mechanic Street in Franklin, Virginia. Comedic Services, LLC is a Commission on Accreditation of Rehabilitation Facilities, CARF, accredited service. Our motto is fostering a culture of service and advocacy for humanity.
I'm Hala Ayala. My story is a Virginia story. Night shifts, minimum wage, pregnant, with no health care. But with a little help and a lot of hard work, I built a career and a middle-class life. So when I got to Richmond, I made it my mission to ensure hardworking Virginians have that same opportunity. As Lieutenant Governor, I'll build on that record to attract more good-paying jobs so every family thrives.
And welcome back with our special guest, Hala Ayala. She's running for Lieutenant Governor for the great Commonwealth of Virginia. And we're putting our money on her. And I'm going to keep that uncut. I'm going to tell you the truth. But I don't know if I ever got an answer from my last question. Do you support 2 terms for the governor, for a Virginia governor, as opposed to 1?
You know what? I support what we have constitutionally. I think we need to listen to both sides of the argument. Bob, I always do my homework, right? Because we don't want any unintended consequences. But what I will tell you is that, you know, Terry will make history this November by being elected not only once, but he came back and he wants to do it again. He wants to continue the good work of Governor Northam.
Okay, all right. Well, fair enough.
Absolutely.
Like I said, I feel that's a little bit, you know. I just personally, and we can agree to just agree. And so personally, you know, I think it's a little, you know, 4 years is not. We can't just get enough done. You know, that's just my own personal thing. And speaking of antiquated, here's another one of my pet peeves. And on the last show, we got Senator Spur to admit. And his show's going to come out Wednesday. Everybody check it out. He did the last show. That if his constituents decide that they want to take on this measure, that he would support it. He's the only senator that I've ever talked to.
Well, you have to know, as Lieutenant Governor, I don't get to make that decision. So
No.
Yeah.
I'm not talking about this anymore.
Oh,
I'm moving on to next.
Oh, okay.
I left the you know, and we probably cut a little bit of that out. But yeah, my next question is, and I think that this may be, the Commonwealth is one of 17 states that still appoints its judges.
Yes.
And so, how do you feel about that? Do you think would you support a constitutional change? I believe that's what it would take to elect our judges, where we would elect judges that come from the communities that, you know, they live in, as opposed to, you know, right now they don't have to, you know, be in that community. They could be, you know, it could be a favor for this person and say, I've seen the little judge chessboard. It's almost hey, I said it, it's uncut. But so would you support a constitutional change about that?
Well, let's talk about some logistics here. You see in the General Assembly, You know, judges were appointed this last General Assembly session.
They were.
And we appointed the most diverse group of
It was a good
individuals.
group.
So again, elections have consequences. When you talk about a constitutional amendment, there are two sides to that argument, right? And my job would be, as not only a legislator, is to listen to voters, but also listen to both sides of the argument and make an informed decision.
Right.
But note that I, as Lieutenant Governor, can't bring that issue to the
Right.
forefront, but
I understand
if it
that.
came to the floor, we would have those conversations, would make an informed decision, and the only time I could vote is that if it was a tie.
So let's
and
say
if
it's
it
a
did
tie.
count, I would vote in support of it because, look, I would say this, you know, if this is what our voters want, if this is what we come to do, you know, after, first and foremost, Bob, this is the danger of the question that you asked, because sometimes legislation
Right.
isn't always what we think it is. So we have to make
That's
sure that we're doing our homework. So before I say, oh, yes, I would support it, that to me is speculating that everything is okay, A-okay with the piece of legislation. So it's not that I'm not
No,
trying to be direct.
no.
I'm just trying to be, you know, informative to our community about how this process works.
Well, I think I'm just talking in theory, and
Yeah.
in theory, where, and from my understanding of the whole political process, anytime you can vote for something rather than something being appointed, I'm going to go on the side of votes. I mean, even if it's, you know, it might not be to my advantage, and I know, you know, all politics, but if it's the democratic thing to do, and if I'm gonna hold true to my democratic ideals, if you're saying, well, I can vote for a judge or I can have someone appoint a judge, you know, I don't know, like I said,
You have to look at both, like, and I don't mean
What's the other side of the argument?
You know, both. I don't mean to minimize
This is
the
interesting.
argument of by using my analogy. I just want to make that clear before somebody starts to.
No.
But I just want you to see that voters are having a voice as their representatives, whom they also elected, are taking a vote on judges, right? And how we appoint them. Now, the Democrats, again, we have made progress
Yeah.
this year. That wouldn't have been possible if we didn't have the majority. So I always say, assess, reassess, and then make an informed decision.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, normally, I mean, our representatives vote on stuff all the time. So that's their job, to represent us. because
Absolutely.
when I'm talking about something like a position like that, we're going to move along. I think we're going to agree again.
Cut out the Doritos part.
Okay, all right, okay.
Cut out the Doritos.
We'll cut that out. All right, so our next question has to do with redistricting.
Okay.
All right, I understand, and from, you know, some of my sources that, you know, there may be some challenges.
Sources, Bob. What's going on?
I know some people that know some people, but you know that there may be some challenges in with respect to maintaining that majority in the Senate based on redistricting. Is the Democratic Party going to be able to hold the line, or will you be casting that vote, that deciding vote? What we're going to do?
Well, I can't predict the future. First, I have to be elected. But secondly, we are, you know, the importance of this process, redistricting, is not just the political process or the political impact, but we have a census that allows us to reassess our state every year. And what we do with that information also has to do with funding, like how much money will go to schools,
Exactly.
roads, infrastructure, all of these things that we are celebrating and the progress we're celebrating. The thing is, we need to make constitutionally fair maps. I'm not sure what you're referring to, but
Well, don't they, when they redistrict the representative based upon that same census, correct?
well, they will be. Yes,
Right.
they
So I'm
have
saying,
to use that.
and that was a fiasco in and of itself, but that's a whole nother
That's
show.
a whole nother show. But
No, so I was saying that, you know, from my understanding that, you know, the way that the census, the numbers, like I say, it was awful the way it was done. It was cut short, and a couple of things happened. But how do you feel like is that going to affect the Democrats?
Well, I think, again, we as Democrats or Republicans, we should not be choosing our voters. Our voters should be choosing us. And this is a process, right? Redistricting is a process. So I'm in support of fair maps, right? That is just kind of fair and constitutionally fair maps. Secondly, I'm confident, this is my personal opinion, Hala only, that we will hold on to the majority. And that's going to be contingent on who turns out this November 2nd. Because again, we look at all of the issues that we've already talked about. Any of these circumstances when it comes to whether we're talking about future legislation, decisions on important issues, it all comes down to who has the majority in both chambers.
Right, exactly. Well, let's move to our next question. And it's one of my favorite issues. I've always been a big advocate of regionalism. And I mean, you guys up in Nova, you have it, you guys got it under they done took regionalism to a whole nother level with like 3 jurisdictions, the DMV, the District, Maryland, and Virginia. So, but they still, they still call it Nova. So we call it Coastal Virginia now. So
What do you call it?
Coastal Virginia. We are COVA. You guys, I know. This is your first time hearing of Coastal Virginia?
Well, yeah,
Well, okay, well, yeah, keep coming. But yeah, so we no, really, we call it it's Coastal Virginia, and the reason that change was made a few years ago, and it's still catching on, but a lot of businesses are changing their name from Hampton Roads to Coastal Virginia, and that came about because people would say Hampton Roads, and they were like, well, where is Hampton Roads? Not citizens of the Commonwealth.
Oh, I was like,
No. I'm talking about people that might live out in Utah or LA or wherever.
okay.
When they say Hampton Roads, they're like, what? But when you say Coastal Virginia, if you can look at a map, you know that, hey, let's go down to the coast. That's my Bruce Willis voice.
That's your Bruce Willis?
On Die Hard, he said, hey, let's go down to the coast, let's vacation. But no, so it's actually, no, it's a thing. It's called Coastal Virginia. My actual business is just a shameless plug. Coastal Virginia Community Development Association. That's my LLC and my nonprofit. But there are a lot of businesses that are in this Hampton Roads area that have, changed over to that moniker. But really, my question is about regionalism as far as, and I know you can't predict, but it's not really like the question has to do with like if you had a magic wand, right? And with the infrastructure bill that they're working on, if it ever gets through Congress, the House actually, believe it or not, and gets to Joe Biden's desk, would you support having a high-speed rail? Just think about it. Close your eyes and think about it. No, a high-speed rail from COVA to Nova, from down here.
How fast it's going to go, Bob? Like how fast?
I'm thinking about 120, 140. That's the going rate, I think, for high speed rail in the Northeast corridor, all up and down the East Coast. That's where Amtrak has its, most of its business, not all of it. But yeah, so that's just something to think about. You don't have to, weigh in on that, but I think it would just, or even if they had a regular, because we're kind of a cul-de-sac here in Hampton Roads.
That's an interesting way to put it.
Yeah, 95 will run you from D.C. all the way to Atlanta. And unless you take that, left on 64, you're not going to get to Hampton Roads, or even from 85 going down through the Commonwealth. We're a little cul-de-sac off to the left, so we need something that's a more direct route. So that's just something to think about.
No, I mean, I like it. I hope Biden's bill does pass because we need it, and it will offer some much needed funding to our communities. But to your point, Democrats would deliver, right? We've delivered some funding, and we do need to work on connecting more of Virginia.
Okay, all right. So one of the things that, and I always preach this, I always tell people, because one of the things that bothered me about some of our elected officials, particularly not just in the House, but even on the municipal level, that, and I ask people all the time to come and, people will say, who should I vote for? People actually do that. I mean, and I give them my opinion. I don't have a problem with that. So,
Well, you're uncut.
and I'm uncut. And so my thing is this, is that when you vote for someone, any politician, you should know what their issue is. Like I said, unfortunately, Trump was build a wall. I mean, everybody knew that. I mean, President Obama was healthcare, Obamacare. Everybody knew that. If it was dealing with me, if I was running for office, it would probably be something to do with education or something. My question is, what would if they call your name? What would they associate you with? Your number one issue?
Well, I have several, but Medicaid, it saved my life and my son's life. Like, I've shared my story on many platforms through my commercial. Let me tell you, when you are facing death and you know that you could lose your child, nothing is more scarier. I can't say nothing is more scarier, but
no,
that is at the top of, a personal experience that I never want to ever have again. And no Virginian should ever have it either.
That makes sense. That's a pretty good one. Are they going to expand it for dental for adults and Medicaid now? Or I know the children have it. I think I had a couple of people come and ask me about dental for adults within the Medicaid. And it's been expanded, so that's another thing that, kudos to you guys. I mean, you guys did a great job.
And we
with that.
had bipartisan support, but the thing about Medicaid is that who would have predicted a pandemic, right? Who could have said, if we did, just imagine the 500,000+ Virginians that have it now, right? Medicaid expansion. But now we have 700,000 people, to some of your point, plus 100,000 children who need access to affordable health care. So, again, everything is on the line this November because the work that we have done. Vote. Vote like your Medicaid depends on it, because it does. I know how much I needed it, and I know how many more Virginians need it.
All right. We're going to take one more quick break and pay homage to our sponsors. We'll be right back with Hala Ayala, candidate for Lieutenant Governor for the great Commonwealth of Virginia.
Thank you.
Love First Marriage Movement, where we work with couples virtually all over the world to transition from a place of pain to genuine peace and resilience from the inside out. We help them by sharing our own marital rags to marital bliss journey. Check us out at lovefirstmarriagemovement.com.
Every time my children walk out the door, I hold my breath. What if they encounter the police? We had the talk, and I prayed they listened. But as a mom, the worry never goes away. So as a leader in Richmond, I demanded transparency and accountability from law enforcement, requiring body cameras, banning no-knock warrants. So no matter what you look like or where you live, every Virginia family should feel safe.
We are back with our special guest, Lieutenant Governor candidate, Hala Ayala.
Hey.
I like to say Ayala. It's wonderful. Great name. And so,
Thank you.
I just have a couple more questions. We're gonna. She has a really busy schedule, and throughout the Commonwealth, she's pounding the pavement. So she's running that campaign. So we're very fortunate to have had her for a guest. But I have a couple more questions. This is the weed question. I always call it the weed question.
The weed question?
No, I'm going to be professional. Now, Virginia has legalized marijuana. No, not really, but Virginia.
His constitutional voice.
That's back on my constitutional voice. But I want to address they've legalized marijuana, and again, we got casinos coming. They've legalized marijuana. I'm like, where am I living at? I'm like, I can't believe it that I'm living in Virginia. And people in all over say, man, what is going on in Virginia? And it's just, I guess, progress has happened so rapidly in a relatively short time. It's they're voting for Democrats for president. It was like, whoa, I'm happy about it. Don't get me wrong. But my question has to do with business owners and investors. Will they have a fair opportunity to come in and, you know, a lot of people spent time in prison over marijuana, and a lot of, you know, people were pulled over saying, I know that's eliminated where they can't say I smell smoke and pull you over. But, you know, even with the gambling and stuff, it has disproportionately affected, you know, communities of people of color. So give me your thoughts on how you know, kind of a forecast. I know it's not, you know, how do you think it's all going to play out as far as affecting disadvantaged communities?
So I would say we owe a great deal of thanks to our governor who moved up legalization. That was his decision.
Right, I remember.
Because we know that this, to everything you were just depicting, has disproportionately and unjustly targeted Black and brown communities. That we do know. Secondly, the funding that we're going to get from legalization is going to help our schools. It's going to help infrastructure. It's going to connect those dots within our communities, and rehabilitation. Right? We heard the arguments, you know, on both sides, but this was the right thing to do because this law was a Jim Crow law that had, you know, like you're talking about, pulling us over because you smell something, right? This was just unjustly targeting our Black and brown communities. Now, when it comes to businesses, we need to do our due diligence to make sure there's fair and equitable opportunities. This is Black and brown businesses, right? And within our community to have access to those licenses.
Okay, and finally, this is a portion of the show. This is your part of the show.
My part of the show.
Make a closing argument. Tell us why we're voting for you again. And also, if you want to, at the end of that, if you want to let us know your website and all the information, how we can get in contact with you, take it away.
I will take it away. Well, Bob, we're going to make history by electing the first Afro-Latina woman in the history of the Commonwealth, first woman of color in the 400 years. I'll be number 42, like Jackie Robinson, so hopefully it's the greatest if you're a baseball fan. But also, I am the only candidate with not only the lived experience, but the legislative experience. So I'll bring that to the table. I'll bring every Virginian's voice, the voters' voices, and even this conversation with me to Richmond. I think one of the things you'll see out of my candidacy is that, you know, I hope that people take away that I care, I'm compassionate, and I'm passionate about moving us forward and protecting all the measures and gains that we have made, because it affects you, it affects me, it affects our future. So this November, vote like your life depends on it.
Like your life depends on it.
Because it does. Vote like your health care, your reproductive health care, the gun safety measures, the marijuana legalization, voter protections are all on the ballot this November 2nd. So to find out more about Hala, go to Hala for Virginia. That's HALAFOR, Virginia spelled out, .com. Get involved, get engaged, because again, democracy is not a spectator sport.
Okay, I want to thank you again for coming on the show. We really appreciate you taking time to share your vision with our listeners and our viewers. And again, ladies and gentlemen, you've been listening to Bob Z UnKut Community Views with our special guest, Hala Ayala, candidate for Lieutenant Governor for the Commonwealth of Virginia. Thank you, and we'll see you on the other end. Peace.
Peace.